The ring was already chosen. The deal was done. All Kang Junhyuk had to do was pay and walk away. He had closed billion-dollar deals without blinking. Negotiated territorial disputes in smoke-filled rooms where men disappeared for saying the wrong name. Survived gang wars in Busan that turned alleys into graveyards. This was supposed to be easier than any boardroom negotiation. Something simple, he said. Elegant. No questions. The clerk bowed and turned toward the back counter. That was when everything stopped. Behind the glass stood a woman adjusting a tray of rings. Her hair was shorter now, her face sharper, but Junhyuk knew her instantly. Han Soo-jin. The woman he once married in secret. The woman he erased from his life the night his mentor was murdered. Their eyes met. For a brief, dangerous second, the world held its breath. "Welcome to Baekseek Gallery," Soo-jin said evenly, as if she were greeting a stranger. "How may I help you?" Then Junhyuk saw the child. A little girl stood beside Soo-jin, half hidden behind the counter, clutching a worn pink backpack. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her eyes, dark, sharp, unsettlingly familiar, studied him with quiet intensity. The ring box in Junhyuk's palm suddenly felt heavier than any weapon he'd ever carried. "Mama," the girl whispered. "Who is that man?" Soo-jin's hand moved instinctively to the child's shoulder. "Just a customer," she replied. That was the moment Junhyuk realized the ring in his hand wasn't heavy because of its price. It was heavy because it belonged to the wrong future. Seoul never slept, but that night in Cheongdam-dong, the city felt unnervingly quiet. Black sedans lined the street outside Baekseek Jewelry Gallery, a boutique known only to chaebol heirs, politicians, and men whose names never appeared in the news. Inside, the air smelled of polished glass and money. Every diamond sparkled under soft lights designed to flatter power. Kang Junhyuk had survived gang wars in Busan, betrayals in Incheon, and a decade-long turf battle that turned him into the unseen king of the southern ports. People whispered his name at gambling tables and luxury bars in Gangnam, but never too loudly. Tonight, he was just another man buying an engagement ring. The ring wasn't for love. Love was a liability. It was for Chairwoman Seo Yura, daughter of a political dynasty and a woman whose marriage to him would legitimize everything he'd built in blood and silence. Their engagement would be announced during Chuseok, in front of elders, cameras, and investors. In Korea, timing was everything. The gallery's interior was sterile perfection. White marble floors. Glass cases arranged in flawless symmetry. Not a single fingerprint marred the surface. Everything here existed to be admired, purchased, and forgotten. Junhyuk walked past display cases filled with rings that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. None of it moved him. Wealth had stopped impressing him years ago, around the time he realized it couldn't buy back the things that mattered. A young clerk approached, bowing slightly. "Welcome, sir. Are you looking for something specific?" "An engagement ring," Junhyuk said. His voice was calm, controlled. "Something appropriate for a formal announcement. Simple design. High quality." The clerk nodded and gestured toward a private viewing area. "Of course. Please, one moment." Junhyuk stood near the counter. The room was silent except for the faint hum of climate control. Everything about this place felt like a transaction. Clean. Efficient. Emotionless. Exactly what his life had become. He checked his watch. 30 minutes. That's all this would take. Then he'd return to the penthouse overlooking the Han River, finalize the wedding logistics with Yura's legal team, and move forward with the merger that would make him untouchable. The door behind the counter opened. A woman stepped out, carrying a velvet tray. Junhyuk looked up. Time fractured. Behind the glass stood Han Soo-jin. The woman he once married in secret. The woman he erased from his life the night his mentor was murdered. The woman whose name he hadn't spoken aloud in 7 years. Their eyes met. She didn't gasp. Didn't flinch. Didn't react at all. Her face remained perfectly neutral, professionally composed, as if she were looking at a stranger. That absence of reaction, that eerie, practiced calm, was far more terrifying than any confrontation could have been. Sujin adjusted the tray in her hands and stepped toward the counter. "Welcome to Bakeseat Gallery," she said evenly. "How may I help you?" Her voice was steady. Polite. Empty. As if they had never met. As if 7 years ago, they hadn't stood in a cramped Busan apartment, rain pounding the windows, promising each other impossible futures. Jun Hyuk's throat tightened. He opened his mouth to say her name. Then he saw the child. A little girl, no older than 6, stood beside Sujin. She wore a faded pink backpack and held a small sketchbook against her chest. Her hair was tied in 2 uneven pigtails. Her eyes, dark, sharp, disturbingly familiar, studied him with the kind of focus that didn't belong to children. She didn't smile. Didn't look away. She just watched. Jun Hyuk's pulse hammered in his ears. The diamonds on display blurred. The sterile luxury of the gallery suddenly felt suffocating. All the power he'd accumulated, all the deals he'd closed, all the blood he'd spilled to stand here untouchable, none of it prepared him for this moment. The ring he came to buy felt meaningless now. Because standing across from him was a woman who had once known him before he became a ghost. And beside her stood a child whose existence raised questions he wasn't ready to ask. Sujin's expression remained unreadable. Professional. Distant. But her stillness wasn't calm. It was preparation. As if she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. As if she'd known, eventually, their worlds would collide again. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. Why does she look prepared, as if she expected this day? Sujin set the velvet tray on the glass counter with practiced precision. "We have several options for engagement rings," she said. Her tone was measured, professional. Classic solitaires, halo settings, vintage-inspired designs. "Do you have a preference?" She never said his name. Not once. Jun Hyuk forced himself to speak. "Something simple." "Of course." Sujin gestured toward 3 rings displayed on the tray. "These are our most popular selections. Platinum bands. Ethically sourced diamonds. Minimal settings." Her hands moved with calm efficiency, adjusting each ring so the light caught the stones at the perfect angle. She could have been demonstrating products to anyone. "This one," she continued, pointing to the center ring, "is a 1.2 carat round brilliant cut. vs1 clarity. Excellent proportions." Jun Hyuk stared at her. She didn't meet his eyes. "The second option is slightly larger. 1.5 carats. Emerald cut. More contemporary aesthetic." Her voice was so carefully controlled that it felt like violence. "And this is our signature design. Cushion cut. Vintage-inspired setting. Hand-engraved band." She recited specifications like they were facts that mattered. Carat weight. Clarity grades. Cut quality. As if the last 7 years could be buried under professional language. Jun Hyuk leaned forward slightly. "Sujin." "Miss Han," she corrected quietly. The words landed like a slap. Miss Han. Not the woman who once fell asleep against his shoulder on night buses from Busan to Seoul. Not the wife whose name he signed away on divorce papers he never read. Miss Han. Customer service. Transactional politeness. "I didn't know you worked here," Jun Hyuk said carefully. Sujin's expression didn't change. "I've been here 2 years. I design custom pieces." Of course she did. Sujin had always turned pain into something beautiful. "That suits you," Jun Hyuk said. It pays well, she replied. No emotion. No subtext. Just a fact. The child shifted behind the counter. Jun Hyuk's eyes flicked toward her. She was still watching him, head tilted slightly, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Soo-jin's hand moved, barely perceptible, resting protectively on the girl's shoulder. Would you like to see the proportions? Soo-jin asked. I don't know her ring size, Jun Hyuk said. We can adjust later. Most engagements require resizing. Most engagements. As if it were just another transaction. Jun Hyuk picked up the emerald-cut ring. Cold metal against his palm. Who's it for? Soo-jin asked. Standard customer service. But the way she said it, flat, distant, made it feel like an accusation. Someone appropriate, Jun Hyuk said. Soo-jin nodded once. Then this would suit her. The child tugged on Soo-jin's sleeve. Mama, she whispered. Can I show him my drawing? Soo-jin's jaw tightened. Not now, Ji-ah. Ji-ah. The name hit him like cold water. Ji-ah looked up at Jun Hyuk. You look sad. Like people who buy things they don't want. Soo-jin's hand tightened on the child's shoulder. Ji-ah. Go wait in the back. But. Now. The girl hesitated, then obeyed, disappearing through a door behind the counter. Silence settled between them. Soo-jin adjusted the rings unnecessarily. I apologize. She's not usually. How old is she? Jun Hyuk asked. Soo-jin's hand stilled. 6. 6. 7 years since he vanished. The math didn't add up cleanly. But it didn't rule anything out either. She's perceptive, Jun Hyuk said. She notices things. Children do. Another silence. Jun Hyuk set the ring back on the tray. I'll need time to decide. Of course. Take as long as you need. She began returning the rings to their case, movements precise, rehearsed. You're different, Jun Hyuk said quietly. Soo-jin didn't look up. People change. Not like this. She finally met his eyes. For just a moment, something flickered there. Something sharp and unforgiving. You would know, she said. Then the professional mask returned. Will there be anything else, sir? Sir. Not Jun Hyuk. Not even his family name. Sir. As if they were strangers. Who is the child Soo-jin is trying not to look at? Ji-ah returned before Soo-jin could stop her. She emerged from the back room clutching her sketchbook, eyes fixed on Jun Hyuk with that same unsettling focus. She moved quietly, deliberately, as if approaching something that might vanish. You're still here, she said. Jun Hyuk glanced at Soo-jin. Her expression had shifted, no longer professional distance, but something closer to warning. I'm still deciding, Jun Hyuk replied. Ji-ah tilted her head. Deciding takes a long time for you. The observation was too precise for a 6-year-old. Ji-ah, Soo-jin said quietly. Let the customer finish. But Ji-ah didn't move. She studied Jun Hyuk the way adults studied contracts, looking for what wasn't being said. Do you have a family? Ji-ah asked. Jun Hyuk hesitated. Not yet. But you're buying a ring for someone. Yes. Does she know you're sad? Soo-jin stepped forward. That's enough. But Jun Hyuk raised a hand slightly. It's fine. He crouched down, bringing himself to Ji-ah's eye level. Up close, the resemblance was impossible to ignore. The shape of her eyes. The way she watched without blinking. Even the slight furrow between her brows when she concentrated. All familiar. All is dangerous to acknowledge. What makes you think I'm sad? Jun Hyuk asked. Jia considered this seriously. Your hands are tight. Like Mama's when she looks at old pictures. Jun Hyuk's chest tightened. And you don't smile with your eyes, Jia continued. Only your mouth. That means you're pretending. Sujin's voice cut through. Jia, go finish your homework. I don't have homework. It's Saturday. Then draw something. Jia clutched her sketchbook tighter. I want to show him my drawing first. No. But Mama. I said no. The sharpness in Sujin's voice made Jia flinch. For a moment, the girl looked like she might argue. Then she lowered her eyes and nodded. Okay, she whispered. But before turning away, Jia did something unexpected. She reached out and touched Jun Hyuk's hand, just briefly, just her small fingers against his knuckles. You have the same scar as me, she said quietly. Jun Hyuk froze. He looked down. On Jia's wrist, barely visible beneath her sleeve, was a small crescent-shaped mark. Faded but unmistakable. Jun Hyuk had the same scar on his left wrist. A childhood accident near the Han River. A broken bottle, stitches done in an emergency clinic, a mark that never fully disappeared. His pulse roared in his ears. Jia pulled her hand back and smiled, a small, innocent smile that didn't match the weight of what she'd just revealed. Bye, she said. Then she disappeared into the back room. Silence crashed down. Sujin stood perfectly still, her face unreadable. But her hands, resting on the counter, were trembling. Jun Hyuk rose slowly. When did she? Don't, Sujin said. Her voice was low. Controlled. But beneath it was something raw. Don't ask questions you already know the answer to. Jun Hyuk stared at her. Is she? She's mine, Sujin interrupted. That's all you need to know. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Jun Hyuk's hands curled into fists. You can't expect me to just. I don't expect anything from you, Sujin said. I stopped expecting things from you 7 years ago. Her words were sharp enough to draw blood. Jun Hyuk wanted to argue. To demand the truth. To reach across the counter and force her to explain why his past had returned with a child who had his scar, his eyes, his way of watching the world. But Sujin's expression stopped him. Because she wasn't angry. She was afraid. Not of him. Of what acknowledging the truth would cost. The rings, Sujin said quietly. Do you want any of them? Jun Hyuk looked down at the display. 3 perfect diamonds. 3 symbols of futures that felt increasingly wrong. No, he said. Sujin nodded once. Then I'll return them to inventory. She began gathering the tray, movements mechanical. Jun Hyuk didn't move. Why does the child feel familiar? He asked quietly. Sujin paused. For just a second, her mask cracked. Because some things, she whispered, refused to stay buried. Then she turned and walked away. Why does the child feel familiar? Jun Hyuk stood alone in the gallery. The silence pressed against him like water. He closed his eyes, and the memories came, unwanted, relentless, precise. Busan. 7 years ago. Rain is hammering tin roofs. The smell of salt and fish from Jigalki market mixes with exhaust fumes. Sirens wailing somewhere in the distance. Sujin was standing in their cramped apartment, tears streaming down her face. I can't do this anymore, she'd said. I can't raise a family in fear. Family. The word had terrified him then. Jun Hyuk had just returned from a meeting that ended with his mentor's body cooling on a warehouse floor. Blood under his fingernails. The weight of succession pressed down on his shoulders. I'll leave, he told her. I'll walk away from all of it. But they both knew he was lying. You won't, Sujin had said quietly. Because you think you owe them. You think loyalty means dying slowly. She'd been right. 3 days later, Jun Hyuk had disappeared into the organization's protection. New identity. New territory. New life built on the bones of the old one. He'd signed the divorce papers without reading them. Sent them through a lawyer whose name he never learned. Severed every connection that could be traced back to her. For her safety, he'd told himself. But standing here now, he understood the truth. It was easier to erase her than to choose her. Present. Jun Hyuk opened his eyes. The gallery felt colder than before. Through the glass partition, he could see Jia in the back room. She was drawing something, her face scrunched in concentration. The same expression Soo-jin used to make when sketching designs in their old apartment. The same expression Jun Hyuk made when calculating risk. His phone buzzed. A message from Yura's assistant, Chuseok. Announcement confirmed. Press release ready. Ring selection finalized. Finalized. As if any of this could be finalized now. Jun Hyuk typed a response, delayed. Will confirm tomorrow. He pocketed the phone and looked back at the counter. Soo-jin had returned. She was organizing something in the display case, her movements precise and controlled. She hadn't looked at him once. You never came looking for me, Jun Hyuk said. Soo-jin's hand stilled. You made it clear I shouldn't. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. The words hung between them like smoke. Jun Hyuk stepped closer to the counter. If I had stayed, you would have resented me, Soo-jin finished. For making you choose. For being the weakness they could exploit. That's not. It is. She finally looked at him. You wanted power more than you wanted me. That's not a crime, Jun Hyuk. It's just the truth. Her voice was steady. Matter of fact. No bitterness. No anger. Just acceptance. And somehow, that hurt more than any accusation could have. Some lives don't survive waiting, Soo-jin said quietly. I told you that. You didn't believe me. Jun Hyuk's throat tightened. Did you know? When I left. Don't ask me that. I need to know. No, Soo-jin said. You need to leave. Her eyes held his, and in them, Jun Hyuk saw something that destroyed him. She wasn't hiding the truth because it was unclear. She was hiding it because revealing it would put Jia in danger. Did she already know he wouldn't come back? Soo-jin pulled the engagement ring from the display, the one Jun Hyuk had been meant to choose. She held it up to the light. Platinum, she said. 1.5 carats. Emerald cut. Excellent clarity. Her voice was clinical. Detached. The woman you're marrying, Soo-jin continued. Does she know what this ring means? Jun Hyuk frowned. It's an engagement ring. No, Soo-jin said quietly. It's a contract. A symbol that legitimizes your position. A piece in a transaction that has nothing to do with love. She set the ring down on the counter between them. I design rings for people like you all the time, Soo-jin said. Men who buy diamonds the way they buy real estate. Women who accept them because marriage is a merger, not a choice. Jun Hyuk said nothing. This ring, Soo-jin continued, touching the band lightly, will sit on her finger at press conferences. Charity galas. Political dinners. It will photograph beautifully. It will tell everyone that Kang Jun Hyuk is a man who has everything. She looked up at him. But you and I both know it's a lie. The words cut deeper than any blade. Jia's voice drifted from the back room. Mama, what are rings for? Soo-jin's expression flickered, just for a second. They're promises, she called back. What kind of promises? Soo-jin hesitated. The kind people make when they don't know what they're giving up yet. Silence. Jia appeared in the doorway, sketchbook still in hand. That sounds sad. It is, Su-jin said softly. Jia looked at Junhyuk. Is your promise sad? Junhyuk couldn't answer. Because standing there, looking at this child who watched him with impossible familiarity, holding a ring meant for a woman he didn't love, he realized something devastating. The ring wasn't just a symbol of his future. It was a weapon. A tool to cement alliances. To secure power. To prove he'd buried his past so completely that nothing could touch him. But the past had returned. And it was holding his hand. Jia stepped closer. Can I see it? Su-jin moved to stop her. Jia, no. But the girl had already reached the counter. She stared at the ring with quiet intensity. It's pretty, she said. But it looks lonely. Junhyuk crouched down again. Lonely? Yeah. Like it doesn't have anyone to be with. Her words were simple. Innocent. But they destroyed him. Because she was right. The ring was perfect. Flawless. Expensive. And empty. Just like everything else he'd built. Su-jin gently pulled Jia back. That's enough, sweetheart. Jia looked up at her mother. Why does he look so sad when he looks at you? Su-jin's breath caught. Junhyuk straightened slowly. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Su-jin picked up the ring and placed it carefully back in its case. This ring, she said quietly, is meant to protect something. Your position. Your future. Your carefully constructed life. She closed the case with a soft click. But protection isn't the same as love. Junhyuk stared at her. Who is the ring really meant to protect? Su-jin asked. The question hung in the air, unanswered, unanswerable. Because they both knew the truth. The ring was meant to protect him from ever having to face moments like this. From ever having to choose between power and the people it cost him. Who is the ring really meant to protect? Junhyuk's mind worked through calculations he didn't want to make. Jia was 6 years old. He'd left Su-jin 7 years ago. The timeline was close, dangerously close, but not definitive. She could have been born 8 months after he disappeared. 9 months. The dates blurred together in ways that offered both certainty and doubt. Junhyuk watched Jia return to the back room, her small figure disappearing behind the partition. The crescent scar on her wrist remained burned into his vision. When's her birthday? He asked quietly. Su-jin's jaw tightened. That's not your concern. When? March 15th. Junhyuk did the math again. He'd left in late May. If Su-jin had been pregnant when he disappeared, Jia would have been born in February. Maybe early March, if she'd gone past term. March 15th fit. But it also left room for doubt. She could be someone else's, Su-jin said, reading his thoughts. Junhyuk looked at her sharply. Is she? Su-jin didn't answer immediately. She arranged and rearranged rings in the display case, movements that served no purpose except to avoid his eyes. Does it matter? She finally said. Of course it matters. Why? Su-jin's voice was soft but cutting. What difference would it make to your life if she were yours? Would you walk away from your engagement? Your position? Everything you've built? Junhyuk had no answer. Because she was right. Even if Jia was his daughter, even if certainty replaced suspicion, what could he offer her? A father whose hands were stained with blood. A life shadowed by enemies who would use her as leverage the moment they learned she existed? You're calculating, Su-jin observed. Running through scenarios. Weighing risks. I'm trying to understand. There's nothing to understand. Su-jin finally met his eyes. I have a daughter. You have a future. Those two things don't intersect. But they did. They were intersecting right now, in this sterile gallery, under lights designed to make diamonds sparkle and futures seem certain. Jun Hyuk stepped closer. The scar is a coincidence. Soo-jin. Genetic anomalies happen, she continued, her voice steady. Similar injuries. Random chance. But her hands were shaking. Jun Hyuk noticed something else then. The way Jia held her pencil, gripped too tightly, thumb overlapping her fingers. The same way Jun Hyuk held pens during meetings. The same way his father had held chopsticks. A family habit passed down through blood. She bites her lower lip when she concentrates, Jun Hyuk said quietly. Just like you used to. Soo-jin's expression didn't change. And she tilts her head to the left when she's thinking, he continued. Like me. You're seeing patterns that aren't there. Am I? Soo-jin turned away. Confirmation bias. You want her to be yours, so you're finding evidence. Do I want her to be mine? The question stopped Soo-jin cold. Because Jun Hyuk himself didn't know the answer. Part of him, the part that still remembered rainy nights in Busan, whispered promises, futures that felt possible, wanted it desperately. But another part, the part that had survived by severing attachments, knew that wanting it made it dangerous. She asks about her father sometimes, Soo-jin said quietly. Jun Hyuk's breath caught. What do you tell her? That he had important things to do. Sometimes people have to choose between love and survival. That he chose survival. The words landed like stones. Do you hate me for it? Jun Hyuk asked. Soo-jin considered this. No. Hate requires energy I don't have. She pulled out a small photograph from beneath the counter, old, creased, carried too long in a wallet or purse. It showed Soo-jin in a hospital bed, exhausted but smiling, holding a newborn wrapped in pink. The date stamp in the corner read, March 15th, 7 years ago. She was born at 3:47 a.m., Soo-jin said. 2 weeks early. 4 pounds, 8 ounces. The doctors were worried she wouldn't make it through the first night. Jun Hyuk stared at the photo. I was alone, Soo-jin continued. No family. No husband. Just me and a baby who came into the world too small and too early, fighting for every breath. Her voice remained steady, but something underneath it cracked. So when you ask if she's yours, Soo-jin said, understand that biology is just one definition of parenthood. I'm the one who stayed awake for 72 hours straight, monitoring her breathing. I'm the one who worked 3 jobs to afford her medical bills. I'm the one who has been her entire world since the moment she took her first breath. She slid the photo back under the counter. You disappeared before she existed, Soo-jin said. So even if your blood runs through her veins, you're not her father. You're just a man buying an engagement ring. The cruelty of the truth was absolute. Jun Hyuk had no claim here. No right to answers. No authority to demand anything. He'd made his choice 7 years ago. And Soo-jin had made hers. Is the truth unclear, or intentionally hidden? Jun Hyuk left the gallery without buying anything. He sat in the back of his sedan, staring at Seoul's glittering skyline through tinted windows. His driver waited silently, knowing better than to ask questions. The city looked beautiful from here. Clean lines. Organized chaos. A kingdom built on ambition and ruthlessness. He'd conquered it. Street by street. Deal by deal. Body by body. And now, sitting in luxury that cost more than most people earned in a year, Jun Hyuk felt nothing but cold. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Yura's team, venue confirmed. Guest list approved. Minister's office requesting confirmation on announcement timing. Jun Hyuk stared at the screen. This was supposed to be simple. Marry Yura. Merge their organizations. Become untouchable. He'd spent 7 years building toward this moment, eliminating rivals, securing alliances, erasing every weakness that could be exploited. Including Soo Jin. He remembered the night he'd made the decision. His mentor's funeral. Rain mixing with blood on warehouse concrete. Men in dark suits whispering about succession, loyalty, survival. You can't have attachments, his mentor's second-in-command had said. Not if you want to lead. Attachments are vulnerabilities. Weaknesses. Knives your enemies will use to gut you. Jun Hyuk had looked at the photograph on his phone, Soo Jin smiling at a street market, holding tteokbokki, unaware of the violence surrounding her husband's life. And he'd understood. Loving her was a death sentence. Not for him. For her. So he'd erased her. Disappeared. Let her believe he'd chosen power over her. Because he had. It's better this way, he told himself as he signed the divorce papers. She'll move on. Find someone safe. Build a life without fear. And she had. She'd built a life. She'd had a child. She'd survived. But sitting here now, surrounded by wealth that felt increasingly meaningless, Jun Hyuk realized what he'd actually done. He hadn't protected her. He'd protected himself from ever having to choose her over his ambition. The door opened. His driver glanced back. Sir. Where to? Jun Hyuk didn't answer immediately. Through the window, he could still see Baekseek Gallery. The lights inside cast soft shadows on the street. Soo Jin was probably closing up now. Gathering Jia's things. Walking to a modest apartment somewhere far from Gangnam's luxury towers. Living a life he had no part in. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Yura herself. My father wants to meet. Discuss merger details. Are you available? Jun Hyuk typed a response, yes. One word. Simple. Efficient. The life he'd chosen required efficiency. No room for doubt. No space for regret. No tolerance for the kind of weakness that made men stare at jewelry stores and wonder about children who might carry their blood. But then he remembered Jia's voice. You look sad. Like people who buy things they don't want. The observation had been devastatingly accurate. Because he was buying things he didn't want. A marriage to secure power. A future built on alliances instead of love. A life where every relationship was transactional, every connection strategic, every moment calculated. He'd become exactly what the organization needed him to be. Powerful. Untouchable. Alone. Sir, his driver asked again. Jun Hyuk closed his eyes. He thought about Jia's drawing, the man standing between two buildings, unable to choose. He thought about Soo Jin's words, you wanted power more than you wanted me. He thought about the ring sitting in that gallery, perfect and empty, symbolizing a future that would photograph beautifully but feel like nothing. And he realized the most devastating truth of all. Success hadn't cost him everything. It had cost him the only thing that mattered. Home, Jun Hyuk said finally. The sedan pulled away from the curb. Behind him, Baekseek Gallery's lights flickered off one by one. Soo Jin would lock the doors. Take Jia home. Read her a bedtime story. Tuck her in. Continue living a life where Kang Jun Hyuk was just a ghost, a memory filed away under mistakes I survived. And Jun Hyuk would return to his penthouse. Pour expensive whiskey he couldn't taste. Stare at contracts that meant nothing. And wonder when exactly success had started feeling like a slow death. His phone lit up with another message. But this time, Jun Hyuk didn't read it. Because for the first time in 7 years, he understood something crucial. He'd thought leaving Soo Jin was the price of survival. But survival without her wasn't living. It was just existing in a beautifully decorated prison of his own making. What did success demand that he never noticed? Jun Hyuk returned to the gallery 3 days later. He told himself it was to finalize the ring purchase. To complete the transaction. To move forward with the engagement announcement scheduled for next week. But he knew he was lying. The gallery was quieter this time. Fewer customers. Softer lighting. Soo-jin stood behind the counter, examining a design sketch. She looked up when he entered. No surprise registered on her face. "You came back," she said. "I need to finish what I started." Soo-jin set down her pencil. "The rings are still available." Jun Hyuk approached the counter slowly. "Where's Jia?" "School." "Does she go every day?" "Monday through Friday." Like most children. The conversation felt like fencing. Each word is carefully placed. Each response was measured. "I've been thinking," Jun Hyuk said. "That's dangerous." "About what you said?" "About choices." Soo-jin's expression remained neutral. "I say a lot of things. You said I chose power over you. That it wasn't a crime. Just truth." "It was." Jun Hyuk leaned against the counter. "What if I told you I want to make a different choice now?" Soo-jin's hand stilled. "I'd say you're 7 years too late." "What if I'm not?" "You are." Her voice was firm. "Because the choice isn't just about you and me anymore. There's Jia now. And she deserves stability, not a father who shows up out of guilt." "What if it's not guilt? Then what is it?" Jun Hyuk struggled to find words that didn't sound hollow. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "But standing here, I realize that everything I built, all the power, the deals, the alliances, none of it feels like anything." Soo-jin studied him quietly. "That's not my problem to solve." "I know. You can't walk back into our lives because you're having an existential crisis." "I'm not asking to." "Then what are you asking?" Jun Hyuk looked at her directly. "Is she mine?" The question hung between them like exposed wire. Soo-jin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Does it matter?" she asked again. "Yes." "Why?" "Because if she is, then I've spent 7 years running from the only thing that actually mattered." Soo-jin's breath caught, just slightly. "And if she's not?" she asked quietly. Jun Hyuk had no answer. Because if Jia wasn't his, then he was just a man projecting desperate hope onto a child who had nothing to do with him. But if she was? If she was, then every choice he'd made for 7 years had been a betrayal. Not just of Soo-jin. Of himself. "You want certainty," Soo-jin said. "A clean answer that makes the decision easy." "Yes. Life doesn't work that way." She pulled out the same photograph from before, the hospital image, Soo-jin exhausted, holding a newborn. "If I tell you she's yours," Soo-jin said, "what changes?" "You still have an engagement with Yura. You still have enemies who would use Jia as leverage. You still have a life that doesn't leave room for children." She was right. Knowing wouldn't solve anything. It would only make the choice harder. "And if I tell you she's not yours," Soo-jin continued, "would you walk away easier? Would it absolve you of wondering?" Jun Hyuk realized the trap. There was no clean outcome here. Every option cost something. Claim Jia as his daughter. Put her in danger. Walk away. Live with permanent uncertainty. Leave Yura. Destroy alliances that kept him alive. Stay the course. Accept that power meant loneliness. "You're looking for an answer that doesn't exist," Soo-jin said softly. "Because some choices don't have right or wrong. They just have consequences." Jun Hyuk stared at the photograph. At the tiny infant who might carry his blood. At the woman who'd raised her alone. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. Soo-jin's expression softened, just barely. I want you to stop making this about what you want, she said. And start thinking about what Jia needs. Which is safety. Stability. A life where she doesn't become collateral damage in someone else's war. The words cut deep. Because they meant the answer was already decided. Walking away was the only choice that protected Jia. Staying would only bring danger to her door. Junhyuk straightened slowly. You're right, he said. Sujin nodded once. He turned toward the exit. Junhyuk, Sujin called quietly. He stopped. She has your eyes, Sujin said. In case you were still wondering. The confession hung in the air. Not quite confirmation. Not quite denial. Just enough truth to destroy him. Who would the truth hurt more, him, her, or the child? Junhyuk stood in the gallery entrance, frozen between two worlds. Behind him, Sujin waited in silence, her confession still echoing in the sterile space. She has your eyes. Not a DNA test. Not legal documentation. Just a mother's quiet admission that held more weight than any certificate could. Junhyuk turned back slowly. Why tell me that? He asked. Sujin's expression remained carefully neutral. Because you asked. And because lying takes more energy than I have left. But you spent 7 years not telling me. You spent 7 years not asking. The logic was irrefutable. Junhyuk had made himself disappear. Had built walls so high that even if Sujin had wanted to find him, she couldn't have. I need to go, he said finally. Sujin nodded. I know. The engagement announcement is next week. I know that too. I can't, Junhyuk stopped. There's no way to make this work. I never asked you to. That was the cruelest part. Sujin wasn't begging him to stay. Wasn't demanding he choose them. Wasn't making this harder than it already was. She'd accepted his absence 7 years ago. She was accepting it now. Does Jia know? Junhyuk asked. About me? She knows her father had important things to do. That sometimes people leave because staying would hurt more. That's not an answer. It's the only answer she needs. Junhyuk pulled an envelope from his jacket. Inside was a bank card, untraceable, loaded with enough money to change their lives. He set it on the counter. Don't, Sujin said immediately. It's not charity. I don't want your money. It's for Jia. Medical expenses. Education. Whatever she needs. Sujin stared at the envelope like it was contaminated. We don't need your guilt. It's not guilt. Then what is it? Junhyuk had no answer that wouldn't sound hollow. Because it was guilt. And regret. And a desperate need to contribute something, anything, to a child he'd never raised. Please, he said quietly. Sujin's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she picked up the envelope and placed it back in his hand. If you want to help Jia, she said, then stay away. Keep your world separate from hers. Let her grow up without looking over her shoulder. The rejection was absolute. Junhyuk pocketed the envelope. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For all of it. For leaving. For not coming back. For being the kind of man who chooses power over everything else. Sujin's expression softened, just barely. You're not evil, Junhyuk, she said quietly. You're just afraid. And fear makes people do terrible things to the people they love. The past tense wasn't lost on him. People they loved. Not love. Loved. As in finished. Buried. Past. Junhyuk walked toward the door. His hand touched the handle. If things were different, he started. They're not, Sujin interrupted gently. And imagining they are just makes it harder. Junhyuk nodded. He pushed open the door. Cool night air hit his face. Seoul's neon lights flickered like stars that had fallen too close to earth. Behind him, the gallery remained warm and bright. A world he'd walked away from twice now. Goodbye, Junhyuk, Soo-jin said. Not, see you later. Not, take care. Goodbye. Final. Permanent. Absolute. Junhyuk stepped onto the street. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He stood there for a moment, surrounded by wealth and power and everything he'd sacrificed to achieve. And felt emptier than he ever had in his life. His driver pulled up. Home, sir. Junhyuk looked back at the gallery one last time. Through the window, he could see Soo-jin returning to her work. Steady. Resilient. Moving forward. Without him. The way she'd learned 7 years ago. Yes, Junhyuk said. Home. But as the sedan pulled away, he realized something devastating. He didn't have a home. He had a penthouse. Assets. Territory. But home, the place where you were known, accepted, loved, that had been left behind in a cramped Busan apartment years ago. And walking away now didn't feel like protection. It felt like the final severance of the only connection that had ever mattered. Did walking away protect them, or guarantee future damage? 3 weeks later, the engagement announcement went exactly as planned. Photographers captured the perfect moment, Kang Junhyuk placing the ring on Seo Yura's finger, both of them smiling for cameras that would broadcast their union across Seoul's elite circles. The ring sparkled under professional lighting. 1.5 carats. Emerald cut. Perfect clarity. A different ring than the one he'd seen at Baekseek Gallery. Because Junhyuk had never gone back to finalize that purchase. He'd bought this one from a different jeweler. Impersonal transaction. No ghosts. No memories. Congratulations, ministers whispered. A powerful alliance. Well done, business partners murmured. Strategic brilliance. Yura smiled beside him, polished, elegant, exactly what the position required. She knew this wasn't about love. Neither of them pretended otherwise. It was a merger. A consolidation of power. Two organizations are becoming one unstoppable force. Everything Junhyuk had worked toward for 7 years. And standing there, surrounded by approval and success, he felt absolutely nothing. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Junhyuk stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. The city sprawled below him, millions of lives intersecting, diverging, continuing without his involvement. Somewhere out there, in a modest apartment far from Gangnam, Soo-jin was probably reading Jia a bedtime story. The girl with his eyes. His scar. His blood. A daughter he'd never claim. A future he'd never touch. Junhyuk's phone buzzed. Not Yura. Not business partners. An unknown number. He almost didn't open it. Then he saw the image. A child's drawing. Crayon on paper. 2 buildings, one dark, one bright. And between them, a figure. But this time, the figure wasn't alone. A smaller figure stood beside it, holding its hand. No message accompanied the image. No explanation. Just the drawing. Junhyuk stared at it until his vision blurred. He understood what it meant. Jia had drawn him. And herself. Standing together in a space that existed only in imagination. A possibility that would never become real. Because he'd made his choice. And choices, real choices, didn't come with second chances. Junhyuk saved the image. Then he deleted the number. Severing the connection one final time. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. Construction. Destruction. Renewal. A city that never stopped moving forward. Jun Hyuk had everything he'd ever wanted. Power. Legitimacy. Untouchable status. And he'd paid for it with the only thing that had ever made him feel human. He poured whiskey he wouldn't taste. Sitting in furniture that costs more than it should. And understood, finally, what Soo-jin had tried to tell him 7 years ago. Some lives don't survive waiting. But some choices don't survive making. The past hadn't returned for forgiveness. It had returned to show him exactly what he'd sacrificed. And now, standing in a penthouse that felt like a tomb, Jun Hyuk realized the most devastating truth of all. He'd won. He'd achieved everything. He'd become exactly what the organization needed him to be. Powerful. Strategic. Untouchable. And completely, irrevocably alone. The ring on Yura's finger would photograph beautifully. The merger would make headlines. The future would unfold exactly as planned. But every night, Jun Hyuk would return to this space. And wonder if the life he'd abandoned came back holding his future's hand. Would he choose power again? Or would he finally understand that some prices are too high, even for men who can afford everything? The question would follow him. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just constantly. A whisper in empty rooms. A presence in silence. A child's drawing was saved on a phone he'd never look at again. Because some consequences don't arrive with sirens and violence. They arrive quietly. In the space between what you wanted and what you chose. In the difference between success and meaning. In the realization that you can own an entire city. And still have nothing worth holding. If the life you abandoned came back holding your future's hand. Would you choose power again, or finally pay the price?